with us? And we are streaming and recording. We're ready to go.
All right. Welcome to the July 22nd, 2021 BAR Small Virtual Meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slambrook. The other board members present today are Glenn Gardner, Bill Huey, Julia Martin, and Fillmore Wilson. City staff present today are Yara S. Administrator and Tori Parrish, City Architect. The order of the meeting today will be as follows. We'll start out with an introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the public. This will be followed by an applicant presentation with a time limit of 10 minutes. Any and all presenters, please state your name for the record, first and last. Anyone affiliated with the project, owners, developers, designers, they should at that time rather than during public comment. By ordinance, the board can ask questions of the applicant at any time. By custom, we do so on the heels of the applicant's presentation. It will be followed by public comment. If you're speaking as a member of the public, again, first and last, really for the record. Public comment will be followed by city staff comments and recommendations. Following that, we'll have a period of applicant response or clarification, public comment, staff comment. It will be a period of 5 minutes, and this is not a time to respond or clarification. Following the applicant response period, we will move to board discussion and vote. The applicant presentation and public comment will be closed. The applicant may clarify inaccurate information recognized by me by raising a hand and waiting to be called on, or you may respond if a board member asks this question. The following items today have been withdrawn or deferred. Agenda item 3, 95 Logan, agenda item 7, 12 CAD, and agenda item 9, 127. Everyone, please turn off your cell phones and other devices, and please limit your comments to architecture only. About zoning, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, concerns that are not within the board, and they cannot be. And I'll turn it over to you for some meeting protocol.
Thank you, Lindsay. Wrong page. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during your presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Video and microphone has been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board or staff members, will only be given the capabilities to speak when they're called on during the public comment period. Chat and the Q&A functions have been disabled. Public comment. The applicants and all team members and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in an in-person meeting, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you've registered and will speak during public comment portion of the meeting, you will need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called on in order by project. Staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. Board members will be polled by chairperson for comments and their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yay in favor or nay, not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if she has not reread the motion accurately. If a board member needs to recuse, he or she will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into an executive session, they'll call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they're ready to return to the regular meeting at the start of the next agenda item. Results and staff comments will be posted on the city website at www.charleston.sc.gov/BAR. These proceedings are being recorded and broadcast to the City of Charleston's YouTube channel.
Tim, I don't know if this is just me, Tim, but will you share the screen so that we can see the applications? I don't see that.
Lindsay, can you repeat that?
I don't see your screen, the screen we normally see where the application. I'm hoping that's not just
that.
It's the same for me. There we go.
How's that?
There you go.
perfect. All right, agenda item number 1 for Haygood Avenue. Kim?
Lindsay, can you repeat that?
Yes.
Agenda item number 1.
Yes, 4 Haygood Avenue.
Thank you. 4 Haygood Avenue is requesting final approval for complete demolition. The building's category 4 in the West Side neighborhood, circa 1890 in the Old City District. I got it. Double check. We're having some technical issues. Let me just make sure that everyone can connect because it seems as if people are having trouble logging in. I see 23 participants, so I'm thinking that we're good. So I'm going to continue. Here's an aerial image for familiarity with the property, just on the north side of the crosstown. Here's some existing site images of the building. This is the north side. This is looking toward the east at the west side of the house. And this is looking north on Haygood and looking south. And these are the Sanborn maps from 1944 and 1955. We didn't delve into it too much because Kevin Eberly has shared and compiled a history on the house, which is very helpful and thorough. And that's the Lamblay plat from 1882, where it's not depicted. 1902 and 1944 Sanborn maps show a slightly different building. The front of that building is a commercial store and was added in the early 1940s. And according to Mr. Everly's research, you can see this number 1 section was the original section of the building. This was added in the early 40s, and then this rearmost portion was added by 1955. And we have Mr. Burns Forsyth presenting. Find him, and Mr. Forsyth, you have the floor whenever you're ready to speak.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time. I wasn't able to catch all of that first part of Kim's run through. I just got on just a second ago, but I'm sure she just gave a little bit of the background of the house. I sent over some additional information and photos. First starting, this is the structural engineering report. This was, or the letter was done by Keen Steele. He was actually on site this morning when the site visit was conducted, just to answer any questions if anyone had any questions and to run through the overview of looking at the property. His recommendation was for a complete demolition. Just as to mention, back in 2008, we also received, were contacted by Stephen Caskey, who said that he was contracted by the city to also do a structural review of the property back then. He said he was unable to give it to us unless the city actually approved of it being shared. But he did disclose that at that time, and obviously this is like 13 years ago, that he had rated it at a, I believe at a 5, which fell into part of the demolition category. So obviously, you know, we're several years past that now. It's 13 years. You know, at this point, we just like to look at ways that we may move forward with the property. You can go to the next slide, Kim. Some of this you would have seen on site. This is a side shot of some of the fire damage that was done. There was a fire, obviously, so there's been significant damage to the property from that fire. I've been actually working with Alvin Ashby from Livability Court because in addition to just the idea of blight or the eyesore of the property, there have been vagrants who have been breaking into the property, and per his request to have us come out and board it up, we went through a process of boarding up and shuttering the property so that to keep them out. But since the fire, they have, they've torn through part of the wall. They got in, had been staying in. We got them out, so that, that just as a safety issue for the community, I think is also something to be raised. But yes, Mr. Ashby has been here several times, and he actually oversaw us like boarding up the property. You can move forward. This is just I guess this would be the northern exposure of the side of the house. The adjacent properties here have already been raised to the ground. So this, the owner of the two adjacent lots has already demolished those structures. You can move forward. This is a back shot of the house. Also, you would have seen this today. That's boarded. You can move forward. Just some of the foundational parts of the home there. You can see what state those are in. You can move forward. And again, same thing. Just some of the charred pieces from the fire. You can move forward. And this was what was sent to us. This was basically saying that the home was unsafe. It was there was a do not enter that was placed on the house, and basically was saying that it was unsound and unsafe to be inside of the structure. You can move forward. Just another side overview. You can see most of this either being boarded. Part of that carport still up on the side. You can move forward. Here's the front of the structure. There's that in the front. You can see the that X that was put on the front, and then that placard that was underneath is what we just saw a second ago. You can move forward.
Mr. Forsyth, that's all we have.
Okay. So there's also I also shared with Kim the site plan for the property, which I'm sure you guys have already seen. And there were some just additional photos of the interior, which are also at a state of, I think, a little beyond rehabilitation. So this property is also, obviously, it's been in my family for a long time. We're kind of at a point where we want to move forward and look at putting a new structure here. That's not in the immediate, but it is something that we're kind of, we're unable to do with the existing structure as it is. I think, as the area now, as you might have seen, it's a tremendous amount of development in this area. Basically surrounding all sides of this, and including the larger development directly in front. There are a lot of interest here in terms of development, and I think, some of I know a lot of the surrounding area property has been bought up. And it's something that we would like to retain in our family and just be able to do something with it towards both its potential as a mixed use. My sister has a dental interest in maybe doing a small dental business. And then, also my desire to actually have a place here that I could also live in. So if it was a mixed use, we could do maybe something like that. But basically carrying forward that, that legacy of, over a century of us being here on this property and being able to keep it in our family and go forward. So that's essentially the gist.
Thank you, Mr. Forsyth. Fellow board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Forsyth?
No.
No.
All right, we'll move into public comment. Kim?
We have April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation. April, you have the floor.
Thank you. April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. I'm sorry that I missed the site visit this morning. I've heard it was a helpful meeting. HCF has reviewed the application for demolition of the historic Freedman's Cottage at 4 Haygood Avenue, and we thank Mr. Eberly for the excellent house history on the property. The neglected condition of this historic structure is unfortunate. Vernacular cottages such as 4 Haygood with a commercial addition on the front are few in number and important to protect. We recommend denial of this application for complete demolition. This said, we are not opposed to partial demolition of the less historic portions of the building, such as the rear and additions constructed after 1955. Thank you.
We also have Kevin Eberly. Kevin.
I'm also, for the same reasons that April just mentioned, opposed to the demolition of the building. And I always take a real interest in these sort of small vernacular type buildings that are too frequently overlooked in Charleston history. I've lived in my house for 25 years, and I think this one has always sort of been in this sort of quasi condition. And so it would be nice to see the building rehabbed. It seems like that would be the better solution to vagrancy, is to restore the building and not to demolish it as the solution. And the only other thing I would add is in April's remark, she referred to this as a Freedman's Cottage. And the interesting thing about it is a friend of mine, Lisa Felser, who used to work for the BAR staff, wrote sort of the definitive book about those cottages in Charleston, and noted that the name is wrong because there are almost no examples actually built for or by former slaves. This is a very interesting history where it is documented to have been built for or by a former slave. And so it really is sort of interesting. And I totally realize the odd dynamic then of having the great grandson of the builder be the one who's asking to demolish it. And I understand that is an odd situation, but I guess I'm just sort of opposed to it for those sort of general historical interests.
Thank you, Kevin. Kim, do we have anyone else speaking from public?
No, we don't.
All right. Well, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Oh dear, where did it go? Okay. Really, I'm not going to be able to put it up on the screen. I'm just going to scoot it over here so you guys can see it. So in reviewing an application to demolish any existing structure, the Board of Architectural Review shall consider, among other things, the historic, architectural, and aesthetic features of such structure, the nature of character of surrounding area, and the historic or culturally important use of such structure and the importance to the city. So our comments are as follows. We do understand the challenges the owner faces and the considerations that the board must take into account. These considerations are weighed equally against the Secretary of the Interior standards. While the original portion of the house is tucked between two later additions, neither of these construction campaigns retain any considerable amount of viable fabric to be preserved in situ. What would essentially be preserved is the form. The building would be required to be elevated considerably, increasing the risk of loss. Commercially zoned parcels surround the historic house in three directions, and a freeway, 2 fast food chains, and a highway are all adjacent to the parcel. Currently, the parcel is DR2F, which is residential, and could also have a church or elderly housing. Lastly, while the house has been in the family since its construction, the great-grandfather of the current owners was Mr. Burns and Forsyth, and along with his wife, Miss Ruby Forsyth, they are the most notable figures to own the cottage. She was a prominent figure as a founder of a school for African American children in Pawleys Island, where Miss Ruby was also a well-respected and esteemed educator. That legacy, staff feels, protected and will live on in the school that still remains, and not within this house that they lived in for a short time. So for all these reasons, staff's recommending approval. Thank you, and my apologies.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Forsyth, did you want to respond to any of the staff comments or public comments?
No, I'm in, much in what the staff says. I believe the same thing, the memory and the foundation legacy of my family, and that, what our connection to Charleston and, our over a century time being here is beyond this house. And I think in the spirit of my grandmother, of my father, as a child who spent time in this home, I would appreciate what the staff said in terms of approving and moving forward to create something that will take us now we're in a new millennium. So, and as to the public comments, I can appreciate having, wanting to see homes like this. And I don't think that it is something that in itself will be something that we won't see, but taking into account, looking at the area, what the adjacent properties, and I don't feel like the house was or is at a point where it is unique unto the point where it would be something that would be preserved just to be preserved. So yes, I appreciate the staff consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Forsyth. All right, we are now in board session.
Kim, I have a question to start. Can you just confirm, I believe that this parcel is within our purview for new construction, right? It's below line. I know Ashton Street is.
Let me just confirm that real quick.
Well, while you're confirming that, I'll just say,
Yes.
Thank you. I do appreciate that it is still in the same family. That's really impressive. And aside from that, just judging from the state of it, the original fabric that's present, and the feasibility of restoring it and elevating it, I this morning sort of came around to feeling like it was the right thing to let it go. But with that said, it really is a shame that it was allowed to languish for as long as it did, and I wish it had been taken better care of. but this is where we are, and I think I'm going to side with staff on this.
This is Bill. I have a question for staff as well, for Kim. In deference to some recent demolition applications, I believe we even had one at the last meeting. I know that on that particular application, the building form was important to the streetscape because there were still enough contextual examples of it. Although the streetscape had been altered greatly, there were enough contextual examples of that form that I believe we determined that it was important to try to save that building in order to sort of reinforce that historic rhythm of the street and the context. Is your recommendation a little different on this one, mainly because contextually, there's really not much left around it? Is that a jumping off point? I'm just trying to understand.
That's a good way to put it, Bill. It's a jumping off point. It's what caused me to first have concern was that, you know, there's very little around it that retains the historic streetscape.
And
so I felt that was the main reason.
Okay. And I guess one more question, and I know that we're not supposed to value the viability of demolitions based on what may or may not come in replacement. I know the applicant's already stated that their desire would be to reestablish, you know, some form of presence on the property through a building. But I think it's probably fair to raise the question, since adjacent properties have been cleared per se. And maybe we don't know this answer, but as it's shown now, DR2F, that would be a pretty intensive undertaking for potentially a developer to try to unify properties and consolidate properties and then get it rezoned. That's the only other reservation I really have, is that potentially there could be some kind of activity like that. Not saying, I believe the applicant, I believe what the applicant's saying, that he's going to try to hold on this into his family, but I guess just potentially the specter of a consolidation of properties and maybe a larger development on this property. That's a little bit worrisome to me. And the potential loss of this form might even mean more to what might be happening on the adjacent property. So I guess it's a question for Kim and staff. Have you guys kind of weighed that out, or am I overthinking that from a zoning perspective?
I think that's exactly right, Bill. I think you're overthinking it from a zoning perspective. Okay. Unfortunately, we can't, while it's obviously in our nature to think about what could come next, we can't think about crossing zoning lines. That's for a different board. So. Okay. I guess the main reason I asked that is because if whatever comes back new would be in our, you know, area of purview and review, that's great. But I know any actions regarding rezoning and everything would happen, you know, ahead of and maybe not even involving this board. So that's the main reason I brought that question up. I know we have to weigh it based on the merits of what we're seeing in front of us. And I definitely value staff's comments and opinions to that. And I think the main thing that I'm keying off of in your comments is the fact that there have been additions both forward and backwards of the building. And what's left of the remnant of the original structure has been pretty greatly compromised. So I believe I can get my arms around staff's recommendation. And I really wanted to point out those issues because I believe that would be in deference to maybe some of the recent things that we've reviewed. So I just want to make sure there's a sort of a defined line of clarity of why, you know, this is potentially applicable for demolition versus, you know, another. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey, Bill, I want to add to what Kim said. You know, when we talked about this one this week and really considered it, and we had the sort of the 4-prong test, I guess you will call it, of what our ordinance asks us to look at for demolition. The context weighs very heavily on this one, and that this is kind of the silo out there at the end. I mean, it's, you know, it's got vacant property, it's got a McDonald's across the street, and so that one was, for me personally, something that weighed very heavily in that decision.
Thank you.
And again, the site visit this morning was really helpful and kind of altered my perspective.
Yeah, this is Glenn. I'll keep it as brief as possible, but I will say that I went to the site visit this morning, fully expecting to be opposed to the full demolition of the building, because the form, even though, you know, it has all been altered, added onto front and back, there is absolutely a form there of a historic building, even with that roof that probably dates to maybe the 30s or 40s. The neighborhood is not, or that block is not necessarily conducive at highest and best use at the moment for this to be turned back into a single family residence. But we're not the zoning board, and I don't really have any doubt that an applicant couldn't perhaps get a zoning change if this building were able to be saved and perhaps reused, as the applicant stated. You know, it could be a medical office, it could be one of many things. However, I think that the application where a look inside actually proved to us how much fabric was intact and how worthy a building was of being saved. I think having the applicants on site this morning and the ability to remove a piece of plywood and have a look inside completely changed my mind to show the extent of fire damage and deterioration. And in this particular case, I think it was very different from a lot of times where we look at the outside of a building and the outside looks bad, but then if you can get a peek inside to the structure to understand what is there and what condition it's in, you realize how able something is to be restored. This was completely the opposite, where the asbestos siding has actually done its job and it has helped and looked inside,
Lindsay, I think
maybe
you got me.
structural.
Lynn, I think your internet might be.
I'm sorry, and I can't do anything about that. I'll wrap up if you can hear me and just say that the site visit completely changed my mind, and I had thought that this building was worthy of being saved, but the condition of it, having looked inside, allows me to support the demolition, I believe.
Fillmore Wilson here. I will likewise be brief. I agree with virtually everything that's been stated by my fellow board members, and to emphasize what Glenn just said, one of the big differences between this and other buildings that we have looked at recently, besides the context, which of course is a principal element sort of lacking with this building, is context. It's that the condition. And the most historic part of this building, if it were to be saved, would have to be elevated. And actually, there's not enough structure here to be saved and elevated. So what you would be doing would be saving the form, elevating it, and recreating it. And so under the circumstances, as much as it always pains me to see particularly a small vernacular historic structure lost, I am inclined to agree with staff and support the application.
I'll go ahead and make a motion for approval of the requests.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Julia for approval. Do I have a second?
Fillmore, I'll second.
All right, let's do a vote. Bill,
Yay in favor.
Yay in favor.
Julia,
Yay in favor?
Fillmore.
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you so much to the board, and thank you, Kim, for all your help. And thank you for the time. I greatly appreciate it.
All right, moving to agenda item number 2, 84 Bull Street, Unit E. Kim would give us an introduction.
Thank you, Lindsay. Give me just one moment. Changing of the guard, I'll let some people in and let some people out.
Lindsay, is your microphone weird today? Somehow you're a little choppy.
It may be. Move my computer. Is this better?
I think so.
Okay. 84 Bull Street Unit E is requesting final approval of after-the-fact replacement of entry door, patio doors, and new construction of a wall. The building is oddly not rated, but it's in the Harleston Village neighborhood and was built before 1850 in the Old and Historic District. Here it is at the corner of Bull and Rutledge, just for your context. Here's some existing site photos. Right behind this pier, along here is where the wall was built. Here's where a door was replaced. Here's another angle looking north. Oops. And this is at the corner of Rutledge and Bull, and here's where the other door location is, and the third door. This is looking at the rear of the building from Rutledge. And this is looking east on Bull Street, and looking west on Bull Street, looking north on Rutledge. And you can see some Sanborn maps from 1902 and 1944. And we have Mr. Will Shalowski. Will, you have the floor whenever you're ready.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can.
Cool. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I recognize this is out of order, and for that I apologize. I don't believe ignorance to be an excuse, but I think contextually it's important as to why I didn't realize I required BAR approval. The building in which my unit is inside was painted in the prior year before my ownership, and vinyl plastic shutters are installed all over, signaling to me there wasn't a major historical barrier for modest change. The prior doors to my unit were builder grade, made of aluminum and damaged. I was under the impression that using higher quality materials to replace non-historical items was also okay. The doors I used were solid wood and glass. The new doors to the unit are all within the style of like basement apartments all throughout my neighborhood. I have photos of that later on. The patios are sunken and behind existing structures and greenery with very minimal visibility from the street. And lastly, the low-grade fence that was built on one of the said sunken patios is helpful for security, built on said sunken patio wall and behind existing metal fencing and greenery, and only partially visible from the street on the driveway side. For those reasons, I proceeded with the work, not realizing I required approval. For that, I'm sorry. But with that said, I'll step through the photos. I apologize for them being small. I submitted larger ones after the fact, not realizing I'd missed the due date. You can see there one of the patio doors and then the wood and glass French doors that I've used. I kept the existing transom that was there. If you scroll back up to the prior page, you'll see the front door to the unit.
This is all I have.
Oh, in the online version that has, the one that's posted online has all of it. I could share my screen if you want, because it's on the website.
Let's see if I can listen to the else up. This is identical to the, maybe it's lower.
Oh, yeah, it is lower. Sorry, just out of order. So that was the front door, same material as the other one. Those are some examples of doors all around my neighborhood of like basement apartments. And then the new door image, the door installed, again, just swapped out in the existing location of the door. And I intend to stain it the same color as my next door neighbors, which is, again, sorry, apologies for the small photo. I didn't realize how small they showed up. And so those are the photos I had. I also submitted, I failed to include a picture of the fence that was built, but the last page shows the view from the street, but I believe Kim had already shown it. It's built low, so you can't see it. It's just added for security that I had done. So that's all I have for today. I would like to make one final statement or comment for the record. I realized I had made the mistake. When I realized I had made the mistake and was issued the stop work order from the BR, I immediately went to the city to go and remedy the situation. My air conditioning also failed that same day. So obviously I needed to do something. While I understand the staff employee that I was interfacing with is no longer there, I was treated pretty horribly, and I just wanted to make that part of the record. After berating me for 15 minutes for ruining Charleston, I was instructed to go and get photos to allow my AC to continue. When I was gone for 20 minutes, I returned and was told that no matter what I did, I'd be rejected and had to come to this meeting. I don't know this for certain, but I felt that I was being punished. When I returned to explain later that I had elderly dogs and without AC, my home would be unlivable. I was told, quote, it wasn't her concern. I should, quote, go somewhere, and I should, quote, my dogs and I could sweat to death for all she cared. I felt like this is important language to be included as part of the record. I don't view that as public service. Like I said, I was ignorant, but it doesn't mean I'm trying to hurt anyone. That being said, my interactions with all the other bar staff was professional and helpful. As well as the folks in the Charleston permitting office. I'd specifically like to thank Jordan for his kindness in helping me navigate the process that I was ignorant to. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shalosky. Do we have any board questions?
I was going to ask staff just how this application came to us. Do you know what the chain of
Yes.
Yes, some neighborhood residents spoke out.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we've had several concerned neighbors speak out.
And do you know if there are anywhere any historic photographs of what the original doors were?
I have not been able to locate any in the file or otherwise.
Okay.
Could I ask him to clarify? I understand the door part, and I've seen all of those photos, but I don't know that I'm fully understanding the wood privacy fence portion of the application.
Glenn, let me
I'm sorry.
pull up a photo I took. I apologize. Well, you guys are going to have to turn your head. I figure out how to rotate this photo. I can Can't zoom in enough. So this photograph is on the east side of the house. The street is along here. Turn your head. This
To the
is a
right
gate.
to the right of the stairs. Okay.
Yes, here the stairs that come down and meet the sidewalk on Bull Street. Here's a
Is that right?
gate here. And then this was a pre-existing iron picket fence that attaches to this knee wall here. And the fence carries, I believe, to the steps. Mr. Shilowski can confirm or deny.
And that's the historic coping wall that goes out to the street, right? And around the front.
Any other board questions?
This is Bill. I do have one question. I wanted to make sure I heard the applicant correctly. I thought I heard the applicant say that the doors he replaced were more current aluminum 6-panel doors. Was that what did I hear that correctly, or?
There's a photo of them a little bit up on the screen there.
And those are, I thought he said those were aluminum. Is that?
I believe you're on mute.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes, they were like an aluminum type material.
And that was there pre-existing to your occupation of the unit. Is that what?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I just bought the unit in May.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, we'll move on to public comment. Kim?
I don't have any public comment for this one.
All right, well then I'll move on to city staff comments and recommendations. Kim, if you'll give those.
Thank you. First of all, Mr. Shilowski, I want to apologize to you for the way you were treated by city staff. There's absolutely no reason you should have been treated like that. I do, you know, I can't stress enough how sorry I am for that. Reflects poorly on all of us, on the city as a whole. So I do apologize and hope we can, you know, somehow make it up to you. I have a couple comments. Historically, openings and foundations would have had solid doors. Modern glass doors seems inappropriate for this utilitarian access to the area under the living space of the house. The French doors are certainly out of character with stucco foundation for this location. The beadboard panel is inappropriate in lieu of the 3-light transom. Replace the door appropriate 6-panel door and 3-light transom. The wood privacy fence is inappropriate for several reasons, as a solid fence should not front the street of an urban residential block. It lessens the pedestrian experience in relationship to the street. Horizontal fencing is not appropriate for this urban design. Staff very infrequently approve the design for even rear yards. Eliminate the solid fence entirely or in favor of an iron picket fence similar to what was on the other side of the stair in the mirrored courtyard. So staff's recommending denial for after the fact approval with the requirement to apply to the BAR staff for 3 6-paneled doors with glass transoms to replace the 3 doors and redesign an iron fence on the knee wall and to obtain a building permit for this and any other. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Shilowski, did you want to respond to the city staff comments?
No, I don't have a response.
All right, we'll move into board discussion.
Okay, I can start. I'll just say that your description of being treated that way sounds terrible, and it's just totally out of character from anything I've ever experienced with staff, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And then beyond that, I do agree with staff. I just can't imagine that there were ever French doors at that level of the house, especially under a 3-light transom. But if you were going to go back with 6-panel wood doors, I would be totally open to the notion of replacing 2 of the panels, for example, with glass. That's been done several times successfully, I think, where someone wants to get some light and visibility, but still retain sort of the spirit of that presumed original design down there. And yeah, I think I agree with everything else staff says too.
Glenn Gardner, Julia, I think that's a good suggestion with regard to the a possibility of glass in a door or a way to make that happen. I'm sure he probably is trying to get some light into that ground floor basement. And then the wood privacy fence. I know staff has commented that iron picket is what would be favorable. I frankly, I could see an iron fence or even an appropriate or a period appropriate wood picket fence being appropriate for that location. If you were wanting wood instead of iron, I don't think we would have ever approved a solid privacy fence. So I would definitely have to hold the line on staff comment 2. But in my mind, I think we could certainly review or even let staff review iron or wood picket.
Mm-hmm.
Fillmore here. I don't think I have anything to add to the comments of staff or my fellow board members. I agree with Julia's comment about the possibility of interjecting some glass into a 6-panel configuration on the doors. And of course, I agree with Glenn that a period appropriate picket fence would be appropriate as well as an iron fence. So I am in agreement with staff and my fellow board members.
This is Bill. I'm in agreement definitely with Glenn's comment about the potential wood picket system instead of the iron. I agree. And as far as the doors go, I definitely agree with staff regarding the street door. Obviously appropriate 6-panel. And I believe the comment is correct. It was made about the other doors as well. I know the staff has made, that the applicant has made a presentation that does show some neighborhood context, which I'm familiar with that as well. And because staff has introduced the idea of potentially introducing some glass into the 6-panel configuration as acceptable, I guess my only potential reservation would be on the door units that are actually, set into the parcel itself. I don't know if there were single doors with some glass in them, in even a configuration that was a little more glass over panel. I myself would probably be receptive to that. However, I do think the street door myself would need to be a solid door that staff's recommending. So I guess that's a minor bit of departure into what the configuration of the doors with glass might potentially look like. And that's really my only difference from staff's comment. So I guess I should have asked, and I saw from the review that staff gave, the French door configuration, I do believe is totally really not appropriate, but and out of character. But I guess I'm wondering about the potential configuration of the glass and panel doors inboard onto the property. The street door, I think, should be a solid 6-panel door. So I don't know if there's any other discussion or deliberation you guys might have about that, but that's where I'm coming from. Thanks.
Based on that comment from Bill, Kim, could we pop back to the photo of the doors that I guess that face Bull? Is that right?
Rutledge.
No, the underneath ones.
Oh, the French ones, yeah.
Can you see those well enough, Glenn?
Yeah, I can. And the bottom of the two images is what has been installed. Is that right?
Yes.
That's right.
You know, I will say, based on Bill's comment, I think it just depends on how, how proactive the applicant wanted to be with coming back to the board versus resolving it at staff, and following that staff directive. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing for that face, not the front door, not the sidewalk door, but those underneath doors, I think, could perhaps be viewed as more of a traditional cut French door with less lights in it. But I mean, maybe I'm falling too far into Bill's conversation and making it too difficult.
Is that what you
Glenn,
were saying, Bill?
I guess it might help if you could go back. The applicant provided some context of neighboring or neighborhood doors that have glass in them. If you can go back to some of those images.
They weren't French, though, were they?
Right, they weren't French, and that's what I was getting at. I'm not really a big French. That type of door, say for example, right where the cursor hand is at 63, for example, or 77, either one of those doors. That's what I was getting at. I think a door like that to me would be acceptable in my mind, but then with a solid door on the street proper. That's just my take of introducing glass into the door.
All right, I'm just gonna try to make a motion and see what happens. For denial of the after the fact application with the requirement to apply to the BAR staff for 3 new wood doors with glass transoms to replace the 3 existing doors, and redesign of a picket fence at the knee wall, and to obtain a building permit for this and any other work, and a board comment that glass panels could be considered for the replacement doors, and just leave it up to staff.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for denial of the after the fact application with a requirement to apply to the BAR staff for 3 new wood doors with glass transoms to replace the existing doors, and redesign of a picket fence on the knee wall, and to obtain a building permit for this and any other work, and a board comment. I'm going to mess this up. The glass panels could be considered, and final review by staff on.
Right.
Okay. All right. Do I have a second?
Madam Chairman, may I ask just a question of Julia? So that was all 3 doors, right, Julia, that could introduce the glass?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll just let staff decide.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my only point of deference from that motion was just that one door, opening right out onto Rutledge. I just thought should be solid. Otherwise, I totally agree with that. So I guess to have a little bit of departure from the motion because of that reason, but okay.
Do we have a second for Julia's motion as it stands? All right, do we have a new motion?
Boy. Gosh, I wish I could hear Julia's motion again. My only change to that would have been that the street door opens directly out onto the street itself, would be then the 6-panel wood door. Otherwise, that again, I just don't remember the verbiage of the motion. I'm sorry. So I guess I would say a motion for, oh boy.
I mean, Kim's hearing you. She heard all of your concerns. I was just going to leave it up to her. But go
Okay.
ahead.
I just didn't know because just something because I don't want to hold everything up because of one door, but that's really the only thing in difference that I would have said. So I guess go ahead, Glenn.
No, I support your position, Bill, because I frankly have always thought this building does a pretty good job of not showing that it's been condoed.
Yeah.
And turned into a bunch of units. And I think that one particular door is my only sticking point with what Julia made the motion of.
Right. Okay, I can try. Hopefully I get this right. Okay. I will make a motion for, I'll make sure I'm wording this right. So if this motion is for, oh boy. Julia, your motion was for approval of then what you stated, correct? I want to make sure I got that verbiage right.
Bill, I can read Julia's motion.
Can you do that? Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Lindsay.
It was denial of after the fact application with requirements to apply to the BAR staff or 3 new wood doors with glass transoms to replace the 3 existing doors and redesign of a picket fence on the knee wall and to obtain a building permit for this and any other work, and a board comment that glass panels could replace all 3 doors with final review by staff.
It was glass panels could be considered for
Yes,
the doors.
glass panels could be considered to replace the panels on all 3 doors. And I understand your position is all 3 doors, but the street facing door.
The Rutledge Street door being a 6-panel solid wood door. That's the only difference. I want to get away without having to reword that.
Got it.
Julie did a great job wording it, so I just didn't want to.
Do we have a second for Bill's motion?
Can you read Bill's motion again? Sorry.
No problem, because I want to make sure we get it right. So Bill's motion is denial of the after the fact application with a requirement to apply to the BAR staff for 3 new wood doors with glass transoms to replace the 3 existing doors and redesign of a picket fence on the knee wall and to obtain a building permit for this and any other work, and a board comment that glass panels could be considered to replace some of the panels on all doors but the street facing doors.
I would say south facing doors and not west facing doors.
Right.
South facing doors.
Right.
And final review by staff.
Please.
Yes. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
That's correct, right, Bill?
Yes, that is. Thank you.
We have a motion.
That was Bill's motion. Do I have a second?
Bill Moore, I'll second.
All right. Vote. Glenn?
In favor.
Julia?
Yay, in favor.
Bill?
Yay, in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay, in favor.
Chair votes with the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Shalofsky. And by the way, can you all hear me better?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item number 3 has been withdrawn by staff. Agenda item number 4, 7 Smith Street. Kim?
Thank you, Lindsay. Just one moment. Okay, 7 Smith Street is requesting conceptual approval for a new 2-story addition to the rear, including elevator, addition to existing accessory building to allow 1-car garage, and hardscaping, including pool at rear. The building isn't rated in the Harleston Village neighborhood. It was built in 1940 and in the old and historic district. And here's the aerial, just for your familiarity with the parcel. Almost at Queen Street. And here's some existing site images. This is the house looking straight on. And this is looking toward the left side. And looking at the right, which is the north elevation. And this is looking toward Queen and looking north. Sanborn maps from 1902 and 1944. You can see the 1944 map shows the building as it is now, except for the addition of the accessory building, which was constructed in 2006. And our applicant is Mr. Gov Gottschalk. You have the floor whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I think I'm unmuted. So since you guys pulled a fast one on us and deleted item number 3, my clients may be trying to log on. Kim, if you could watch for them, John and Elizabeth Rhodes, they may be following along. I'm not sure whether they're going to participate or not. But anyway, thank you all very much for the opportunity to present this project to you. I am Gov Gottschalk with Gottschalk Architects. The owners of this property are new owners, John and Elizabeth Rhodes. They purchased the property in, I think it's February of this year, and are looking to do some improvements to the property. And the improvements have four main components to it. One was to develop a outdoor backyard living space for their families, which is also to include a pool, which is a layout is shown on the site plan for that. The second element was to add to the back of the house to extend the kitchen and family area living spaces to relate to the backyard amenities that they're creating, which included an open porch to enhance the outdoor enjoyment and expand the master bedroom on the second floor above that same space. Third element would be to provide for handicap access for an elderly parent by the addition, okay, here we go, but to an addition to both floors of the house, along with a back staircase that related to the elevator. And then the fourth item would be to provide the ability to have garage parking for 1 car. This is a fairly large lot, and even with these proposed improvements, we're less than a 35% lot occupancy. As Kim mentioned, there is an existing guest house on here. It's actually basically slab on grade, which we would use to help incorporate the inclusion of a one car garage. So as you can see, the houses, well, to give you a little, so first of all, when we first got started with the project, I met with Kim on site and looked at the scope of the work and discussed several options to her. And one of the things that we discussed was the importance of the porch, the side porch on this house, that it's an original part of the project, and the identity of that porch should be maintained. We had just talked briefly, the clients and I, about possibly trying to incorporate an attached garage element But after the conversation with Kim, we quickly realized that really wouldn't be the best way to go. So anyway, so our direction was to maintain the identity of that porch, as well as as much of the context of the existing houses as well. The other thing that Kim and I talked about on site was the typical desire to create an offset or a hyphen between existing construction and new construction. So all those elements, came into our approach for the design. So a little context for the property. This block of Smith Street, which is between Queen and Bufane, is a mixture of many materials and styles. There's brick, wood, stucco. The architecture is also very varied. There's Charleston's single style. There's new sort of contemporary. There's traditional. There's I'm going to even say generic. There's multifamily. The half of the block across from this particular property is the Robert Mills Manor project for low-income housing. So there's quite a mix and variety. The majority of the buildings on this block have been built since 1940. There are a couple of examples of houses that do go back to the 1800s, but those are kind of on the extreme ends of the block. Most of the construction in the block is relatively new. So history of 7 Smith Street, as Kim mentioned, this house was built somewhere around 1940 or 41. It doesn't show up on the Sanborn maps until 1944. And it is Kim, if you could go back one page to A4, thank you. The existing floor plan was a typical kind of 4/4 with a center hallway. The center hall creating a circulation and visual corridor through the whole space. And so the side porch was original. The back porch, a two-story element, which was enclosed in 2003. We're not exactly sure whether it was originally a 1-story or a 2-story porch. It is currently a 2-story element on the back of the house, which is heated square footage now. So changes to the house over time. The original house had no front porch. Kim, I don't know, are you able to jump all the way back to the last page of photos? That would be page 12. One more. There we go. So on the bottom right, that was the house when it was originally built. So you can see the side porch. This was the only photo we were able to find, but it did not have the front porch. The front porch was added in let's see, 2004. If you could go back maybe 2 pages on the pictures to sheet 10. So here, so now you can see in the upper left-hand side, the front porch, covered porch that was added to the house there. You can see where the existing side porch on the left elevation is still there, and the existing rear elevation where that 2-story element was enclosed and added back in 2003. The guest cottage that Kim related to was built in 2006. And then there was a small rear porch on the back of that cottage, which was converted to a bathroom in 2017. So again, this, as Kim mentioned, this is a non-rated house. The street and neighborhood don't have, there's not a high level of consistency. There's a lot of apartment buildings, duplexes, townhouses, and apartments that are in this block. So back to the program, if we could go back to, let's see, I guess it would be sheet A5, please. So the design approach was to expand the kitchen and an eating area to the back of the house with a small wraparound porch, which would relate to the backyard development. One of the criteria, as I mentioned, was to be able to accommodate an elevator and back stairs. And this is probably the toughest part of the project to deal with, because if you bring that elevator, so the elevator can't go in the front of the building, can't go to the right of the building. It wants to have a relationship to access to circulation and vehicular access. So the best alternative was to look at doing something on the left side of the house here, not into the existing house, but really as part of an addition. So the approach here was to extend the kind of the left bay of the house, the dining, powder room, wet bar, kitchen, and extend that back, maintaining the central circulation corridor, and then maintaining the lines of the existing house there, and then adding the stair and elevator shaft to the outside. Now, so the problem is, how do you create a hyphen? Well, our approach here is that, so to
Gosh,
create a
I've got about a
distinction.
minute left. I'm sorry. to
Okay,
interrupt.
yeah, to create a distinction between the old and the new. And what we have done what we've done is we've decided to design the elevator shaft in a way that it appears to be a chimney element to the side of the house. The porch, the existing side porch, really does visually block the view of this addition from the house. We think by changing materials, we provide a transition between the two. And so that's the approach we're taking there. As far as the one car garage, we are taking a portion of the existing cottage and adding a small addition to the front of that building to accommodate the garage, in order to maintain all the site setbacks and things. So that's where we stand today. And I thank you for your time. It's complicated, but thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Gottschalk. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
I have a couple. Could you clarify that note number 2 on the title sheet about requesting approval in stages or something like that?
Sure. So I've had several meetings with Lee in zoning, and the complication here is that traditionally accessory buildings are desired to be back behind the existing building, and which the layout currently is now. With and part of this project will probably be done in phases, but in order to proceed, we needed to have some clarity as to the overall progress of the project or acceptance of the project. The first phase would probably be to put the pool in. Second phase would be to add to the one car garage, and the third phase would be to add the 2-story addition to the back of the house, which then falls into compliance with all of the zoning standards.
And then can you just explain the thought behind sort of disguising the elevator shaft as a chimney? Like, is that what it's supposed to look like, a chimney?
Yes, that that element's being used as the transition between the existing and the new, and primarily through a use of material. So instead of having an indented hyphen, it's kind of an outset transition, but the element, we thought it would be more appropriate to make the element look like something other than just a part of the siding or addition to that, to give it a separate sense of an identity.
I guess, Julia, is that the answer to your question?
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to follow up with one question, Mr. Gottschalk, on the same line of Julia. So the elevator shaft that has sort of the chimney component added to the top, do you know offhand what amount of that height you actually need for the elevator shaft versus how much you're adding for more of a visual to make it look like a chimney? I'm just trying to determine, what headroom or what height do you actually need for the workings of the elevator?
Sure. I mean, it's probably actually a little higher than it needs to be to physically accommodate the elevator. But in looking at the site elevation, proportionally, we're trying to strike a balance between looking stubby and being, too tall. But I think there's flexibility there if the direction is to reduce that in height, we certainly can do it. Code requires a chimney to be at least 2 feet higher than a roof that's 10 feet away from it. So there's a little bit of that. But if you do stand out in the street and draw a sight line from someone standing there on the sidewalk and clip off the front edge of the porch, you end up cutting off about 2/3 of that chimney. So you would see an upper third, but anything that we could do to reduce that height would certainly reduce the amount of chimney that you would see. And not opposed to that at all.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions? All right. We'll move on to public comment. Kim, do we have any public comments on this one?
We do. We have April Wood. April, you have the floor.
Just came up.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. I wanted to thank the applicant for his time presenting the application to us. HCF has reviewed the application for conceptual approval for a 2-story rear addition, elevator addition to the garage, and hardscaping. We have no objections to the garage or the proposed hardscaping changes. We do have concern about the placement of the addition of the main house. As this is a historic house, it is important for the original footprint, especially the corners, to be discernible. The placement of the proposed addition incorporates the back corner of the house and porch. Our suggestion for a more reversible and sensitive solution is to maintain the rear corner and use the setback of the existing enclosed porch as the footprint for a hyphen, with the rear addition extending off the hyphen. We respectfully recommend approval of the changes to the garage and hardscaping, but deferral on the changes to the main house so that a more sensitive design could be presented. Thank you.
I won't be able to say any comment.
We also have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Thank you, Kim. This is Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We really appreciate the applicant reaching out to us on this request. And our comments are very much in line with HCF. In general, additions should be subordinate and concealed behind the primary body of the house. And given the size and configuration of this lot, we feel there is ample opportunity to pursue an appropriate addition that is either minimally or not visible at all from the right-of-way. We ask that this request be deferred for restudy of the addition's location to be more directly situated behind the main house, as well as better subordinated and differentiated, as the eave line of the addition should also be lower than that of the main house. Thank you.
Kim, is that it for public comment?
Excuse me, yes, that is all.
All right, you'll present city staff comments and recommendations.
Thank you. We echo many of the comments already made. Any addition to an historic house in Charleston should be clearly delineated as an addition with a light and reversible touch, keeping details intact where possible. This addition proposes to eliminate the defined corner and eave return with the false chimney elevator, which is inappropriate. We recommend recessing the addition and elevator from the corner to retain a clear demarcation of the primary building and roof line. Number 2, an elevator should not be falsified into a chimney. Although it's aesthetically inconvenient, it can certainly be made a feature of the house in a less visible location. And finally, while the guest house was constructed in 2006, constructing an addition onto the front of it presents an awkward relationship to the primary building. We feel that any addition should be located on the rear of it. So staff is recommending denial with staff comments.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Gottschalk, did you want to respond to any of the public comments or staff comments?
No, I mean, I think the presentation that I gave outlined, you know, the reasons for our approach and the parameters and conditions that we were working under. And while I appreciate the comments from staff and the other agencies, I would disagree a little bit with the fact that this house is not rated and doesn't necessarily need to be considered in the same vein that a historic house would normally be treated, given the context of the street and neighborhood. And but thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gottschalk. All right, we'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Are we allowed to make any comments?
Oh, who's speaking? I'm sorry.
John Rhodes, we're the owners. For some reason, our video is not working, but I've raised my hand several times.
Which that was supposed to be done during the applicant presentation. But if you have anything to add, I'll give you a couple minutes.
I appreciate that, ma'am. Thank you. So first of all, my wife and I love Charleston. We've been going down for many years. And again, I don't know why my video is not working, but we've literally been looking for a home for over 5 years and have made several offers and feel very blessed to have gotten this home. Our youngest son goes to Coastal Carolina. My wife's brother, my brother-in-law, is a doctor in South Carolina. He's got 2 practices in Johnston and Edgefield. And then we have other family in North Carolina. So our overall goal over the next few years is to become permanent residents down in Charleston. And we're really excited about that. But as Gov said, I would really hope and pray that you guys would make some kind of an exception in relationship to this elevator. My wife's mother is 80 years old. She barely walks with a walker. She's using a wheelchair. When we take her down to dinner on King Street or wherever, she's got to use her mobility scooter, or we've got to drive her. She's going to be moving in with us in that cottage. And if we can't kind of get a garage and access to her room, it's going to be extremely difficult. And taking that elevator to the back of the home, even though it may look like 5 or 10 or 15 feet, I would just ask that you guys would really consider the fact that if you're in your 80s and all the way up to your 90s and she's living with us in the next 5, 10, or however many number of years, Lord willing, that that 10 or 15 feet is pretty inconvenient for someone that's in a wheelchair and try to get access to the home. So, so the cottage, the garage, and the elevator, we've been working with Gov for many months, you know, to have access for my mother-in-law to the home and kitchen and just to minimize any tripping hazards, minimize any, you know, just making a safe environment. So I would just ask in closing to be sensitive to your time. I kept raising my hand, wasn't aware I was being missed there, but we would be blessed by your approvals tonight. We have, you know, if not, just a clear direction on getting the approvals quickly. My mother-in-law is selling her home in Pennsylvania, you know, and we would like to move down in 2022. But to do that, it would obviously, we'd like to start construction by the end of this year. So we would just, again, greatly appreciate your favorable approvals this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Okay, the applicant presentation is closed at this point, and we're going to move into board discussion.
Real quick, Lindsay, Kim, could you go to the existing elevations? I was trying to relate that to the comments from, especially from April. So I wanted to check and see that. Okay. And the existing floor plan real quick. I'm sorry. Just, yeah. Okay. Okay. Got it. So I believe the comment from HCF was the area that is now indented as the sitting room off the master on the second floor and then the eating room off the kitchen would be continuing as a hyphen I believe is what was stated, or that part of that indention might be a hyphen, and then the addition carry on from there. I wanted to make sure I understood that point. So thanks for showing that.
Do you have any comments?
Not yet. Go ahead, Julia.
All right. Well, I just for the applicant's sake, I'd like to say that I don't have any opposition to there being an elevator, and I can't imagine any of us would be opposed to there being an elevator that's convenient. But I do think this is a worthy house of careful consideration, and I think it does have good historic value to be protected. And personally, I'm not that troubled by the garage addition to the guest house, especially knowing that it's all zoning compliant. But I feel like it'd really be worth restudying the addition to take a more textbook approach to that and try to shift it just so it's all behind the footprint of the main house. And I think that could be done and still accommodate everything that you're trying to accommodate. So I agree with staff about the house, but I'm not that worried about the garage. Sorry, Glenn.
No, you're good. I am very much in tune with Julia, and the house isn't rated, but I don't think there's any reason not to think about it being a quality house for the future. And so I think my biggest take on it is I very rarely would not support someone being able to add an elevator sensitively to utilize their home and for their family to have access to it. So I definitely support the addition of the elevator, but I do think in this particular scheme, the I think outboard hyphen that if that was the right term, I think it gets really bulky here. And I think the attempt to turn it into a chimney element was a valiant attempt, but in this case, I think it does become a little out of scale. And I would encourage the elevator volume when, I would encourage it to be restudied, I guess, and for it to only be the height that it needs to be to operate. You definitely wouldn't need to consider any chimney height regulations because of the fact that it's not really a chimney. But that said, I think that our directive from the city code would be not to falsify that element into something that it isn't. So I think let's probably let it be an elevator component added to the house, but try to work it a little better into that addition for it to play more friendly with the house. Same thing with the garage. I don't have any major comments about the garage component.
Yeah, this is Bill. I would say I reflect those comments, Glenn. I do agree with the board comments, and I believe HCF's support of the revisions or changes to the accessory building and the hardscaping. I think those are approvable in my mind. I think that probably is approvable this evening. I would think probably a deferral on the addition to the main house in light of Glenn, the comments you just made, I think were a good summary of my concerns as well. Potentially getting the elevator inboard into the structure itself. And I guess the only thing I wanted to kind of see now, maybe as a little bit of assistance to the applicant would be, or what we would usually see in this instance would be a recessed hyphen and then the body of the addition. But the body of the addition also might be slightly pulled back from the side of the house in plane as well. Maybe we've done it as little as corner board distances before. I guess I would, in order to give the applicant a little bit more directive, is that kind of what we were thinking we would be looking for? A recessed hyphenated, and then the addition to be maybe at worst in plane with the side of the house, but probably even minorly recessed from the side plane of the house as well. That's what I would usually think to see. Or do you think it could, given it could have a recessed addition, could the addition present a side wall that's actually proud of the side wall of the house, sort of as shown? I'm just trying to help give a little more, directive to the applicant.
You're asking Glenn, I guess?
Everybody.
Yeah, I guess I will, Bill, to follow that up, I may ask the applicant a quick question. So the elevator as drawn in your submittal, is that definitely the size, the width, not the size, but the width and the depth that it would need to be? Just it to my eye, it appears a little tight when I'm just sort of looking at the scale. And so my question is, would it in reality need to be a little bit larger? Granted, you may have studied that fully. I am not an elevator expert. I'm just trying to determine how big it really would need to be.
Yeah, am I on, Kim? Yeah. The outside to outside dimensions of the elevator shaft are 5 foot by 5 foot, which would accommodate an elevator cab large enough to take, a travel wheelchair. So it's, we're not looking to put an excessively sized elevator in this location. We are trying to minimize the cab size.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Phil here, Bill, I don't think did we fully address your question about the addition, or was it? I think
not
still
yet.
on the table, isn't it?
Yeah, not yet. I was just trying to help the applicant get a little more.
I'm on board with you. Of course, traditionally that addition, at the very least, would not project past the plane of the historic structure and would be separated from it to some degree by a hyphen or some other device. And I think, if when this comes back, that consideration would have, unless there's going to be clear sort of instructions or guidance, then how far that thing does or does not project past the body of the historic structure would have to be considered again, I guess. I'm in agreement with virtually everything. So that's been said. I think putting the elevator in a false chimney might be an interesting and acceptable contrivance in a new construction, but I think not on a historic structure, because it reads as clearly as something that it is not. And so I think that the elevator being masquerading as a chimney is not appropriate. I do think in elevation, the addition to the guest house appears to impose on the main house. I think, as drawn elevations are never exactly what you see on the street, so it's very possible that it looks more dramatic in the elevation than it would actually appear. So I think I am in line with not really objecting to the addition to the guest house, but I do think that the addition to the main house needs significant restudy.
I'm willing to try a motion if you guys are okay with that. I was gonna make a motion for approval of the additions to the accessory building and the hardscaping at the rear, and deferral of the addition to the main house for restudy, providing a recessed hyphen, and also any additions to be inset in plane to some degree from the sidewall of the main house proper.
I did not get all that, but I'm going. Was this conceptual approval? Conceptual approval of the addition to the accessory?
Okay, yes, conceptual approval for the addition to the accessory building, and then the hardscaping at the pool at the rear.
Okay.
And deferral of the addition to the main house proper.
Right, and then there were two. So there were two other comments that you had.
A recessed hyphen,
Okay.
to delineate the addition, and that the addition to the rear of the main house not exceed or actually be to some degree recessed in plane from the sidewall of the existing main house to some degree, whatever that is. I would say, in my mind, that would be like a corner board or some of the other dimensions that we've given on other applications in the past.
Okay. Do we have a second for Bill's motion?
Fillmore, I'll second.
All right, I'll put it to a vote. Julia?
I'm going to abstain from this one.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes for voting for and Julia abstaining. Thank you, Mr. Gottschalk.
Thank you all very much. You guys are doing a great job under tough circumstances, so thank you.
Thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Hey,
All right.
Lindsay, it's Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not asking you at all to stop the meeting, but be patient with me for 1 second. I'm going to switch over. I think my connection is unsteady and I'm going to try to reconnect, but please proceed.
Okay. All right.
Take a minute anyway.
Yeah. Can let me know when you're ready and I'll introduce the next. Well,
Okay, great.
Use it, but I'll just state the next agenda item.
All right, Lindsay.
All right, we are on agenda item number 5, 157 Wentworth Street, Unit E.
Thank you. 157 Wentworth Street, Unit E is requesting preliminary approval for a new 2.5-story house at the rear. It's in the Harleston Village neighborhood and in the Old and Historic District. And just for some context, here it is on Wentworth Street on the south side. Some images of the site. Here's the location right here in question. There's the carriage house. Here's some images from the street. Looking southeast. And looking west on Wentworth and east. Sanborn maps from 1902 to 1944. The applicant put some really good ones in as well, so skip over that. Here's the historic image. I guess it's not too historic. There's a there's a nice Buick out front. Previous motion from May 13th was conceptual approval for height, scale, and mass of general architectural direction with further study for architectural detailing per board comments and consideration of materials. We did not, board did not adopt any of the staff comments, so I'm not going to read those. And if Mr. Stevenson and Ms. Romano want to take it from here, you have the floor.
Hey guys, this is Tara Romano with Neil Stevenson Architects. How much time do I have to speak? Because I always mess this up and I want to put a timer on myself.
10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Hopefully I won't talk that long. Okay, so starting off, I think Kim kind of explained the location here. It's on the south side of Wentworth Street. If you want to flip to the next slide. Looking at the aerial overview, you have the main house and the carriage house from 18, now I forget, I apologize, 50s. And then the space in the back of the property, that's where the new proposed single family house is to go. Next slide. Just a view from another angle, you can see there's a substantial amount of space in the rear of the property, and where the new house will go is kind of across from where the house to the left on the neighboring property will go. Is next slide. That is the streetscape at the top, and then across the street at the bottom. Next slide. Front of the house. Next slide. That front house here is under restoration as we speak. Next slide. This is the carriage house behind it, which is also being restored right now. Next slide. And then this is a view from the back of the property looking forward. So you can see the carriage in the foreground and then the main house in the background going up to 3 stories there. Next slide. This is a view of that rear yard area. At the top towards the left is where the new house will go. And in the bottom photo, you can see that neighbor's newer house behind it. The new house here will be in kind of direct alignment with it and will be smaller, shorter than that house that you see there. Next slide. Another view of the rear yard area. Looking west, and then an east elevation of the main house and the carriage house. You can see, you know, kind of just how far back the new house will be. Next slide. This is some of the context around it. In the center top is the adjacent house and the carriage house, and then to the right of it is brick building. Next slide. Survey, next slide. And then we'll just summarize how we address the board comments. So Kim read the motion, and then a little summary of the board comments that we had in our notes. We were asked to refine the architectural detailing, and you'll see at the top left is our previous rendering, and then the bottom left is the proposed rendering. And likewise, at the top middle is the previous elevation, and then at the bottom middle is the proposed elevation. So we were asked to refine the architectural detailing. The design, you know, is stylistically kind of caught in limbo, as you'll see from the top left. The board was looking for cleaner lines and materials, and there was a request to differentiate between the existing historic buildings on the property, and multiple comments, you know, to kind of go more in a contemporary direction. I think it was open to either go full on traditional or go more towards contemporary, but we heard more contemporary comments, and the client was interested more in a contemporary direction. So the modifications that we made to address these comments First, the porch angles were set at an angle instead of vertical. We used cable railings instead of traditional pickets. The siding was changed to a vertical board and batten for the main portion of the building, and then a 6-inch lap siding at the top gable and dormer areas. And then the vertical foundation screening was changed from horizontal to vertical. The front dormer was changed to a shed dormer to match the rear dormer. And then we made the roof slopes consistent. One of them was off a little bit. And then the front porch, and if you see on that top previous left, there was comment that the front porch was kind of set back from the corner a little too much. So we pulled that over closer to the front or to the west side. The staff had some comments about making the porches a little more vertical in nature. So we worked on that aspect as well. The only other change that we made, noted at the bottom there, the ground topography dropped 1 foot due to the city's adoption, changing from NVGD datum, like the 29 datum, to the 1988 datum. So we did have to elevate a foot, but we were able to do that without too much noticeable difference. All right, the next slide. The existing site plan is at the top, and then below that is the Sanborns. You'll see as you get farther to the right, getting to 1955, by 1955, the whole rear of this property was filled with structures, and there are still remnants of those structures left. You can see on the existing site plan, the concrete pad, there are multiple columns left, and then some of the walls surrounding, and those are all proposed to be demolished. Next slide. The area plan at the top, there was no change in that. We're in alignment with the neighboring building there. There's no change to the zoning analysis either. Next slide. Site plan, you'll see the proposed at the bottom. I bubbled the 2 little dimensions at the front porch. Those were the only things that changed from before and after. Next slide. This is the site section. You can see at the top, the old design, and then at the bottom, you can see the elevation of the new design. So a lot of architectural detailing and material refinement that we worked on per the board comments. Next slide. All right, and this just shows the BAR views down the driveway, down the neighbor's driveway, and from Buffane Street. And next slide. This first one is from Wentworth Street. That house is 152 feet back from Wentworth Street, so it's pretty far back, and you only get a glimpse of the front of it. Next slide. This is down the neighbor's driveway. Again, it's 152 feet back, so you get a little glimpse of the top gable. Next slide. This is a view from Buffane Street. And if you look at the photo on the bottom left, it is like 174 feet back. So I think the rendering makes it look a little closer, but that is the view. You can tell, you can see the neighboring house to the right. We are shorter than that house. And the next slide. And this view, this is not a BAR right-of-way view. This is standing all the way back in the driveway, but it just kind of gives a better idea of the flavor. With pulling part of the front of the porch back, we were able to get some more landscaping in there, and then landscaping along the west front edge you'll see on the right. Next slide. Floor plans, barely any different, just that front porch. Next slide. Again, just porch differences is the only difference in the second floor. Next slide. There's no change in the top floor, the attic space. Next slide. The roof plan, we made the pitches consistent, and we changed that front dormer to shed to match the shed in the back. Next slide. Elevations, this is the front elevation. You can see kind of a clear difference between the previous and proposed with a material refinement and architectural detailing refinement. Next slide.
Mr. Romano, you've got about a minute left.
Okay, thanks. And same thing with this west elevation, just material refinement. You can see the angled porch columns to give it a little contemporary look. Next slide. And then the rear, again, architectural detailing and material refinement. We're planning on cement board for all the siding, whether it's the vertical board and batten or the 6-inch lap. Next slide. Same thing on the east side, just minimal, refinement. Next slide. And then the next few, these are the building sections. Next slide. Wall section. Next slide. And a wall section through the porch. I did it.
Thank you, Ms. Romano. Do we have any board questions for the applicant?
Glenn, I think I only have one. Material wise, windows and doors. Tara, can you clarify that for us?
Okay, if we go back maybe about 5 slides to elevations, at the top elevation notes. So all the elevations are to be vinyl clad 3-part simulated divided lights with 5/8 inch SDL bars. Doors, the patio type doors will be the same material, and then there'll be a wood door for the front door. Solid wood.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions too. For the lap siding, what material are you thinking there? Artisan doesn't exist anymore. I was just curious what you were proposing.
Can you go up or back to now? We're thinking, just a fiber cement type of hardy 6-inch lap siding up there, to differentiate it from the
Just
bottom.
the thin version, you mean? That's what you're thinking?
Well, they have a thicker version too, I think, and definitely the smooth. It doesn't exist anymore.
They stopped making the artisan. They just have the thin, but there's other materials out there you can consider.
All right, we'll take a look at which ones are available. We definitely want the smooth finish one.
That's cool. And then at the site plan, it just says something about like gravel and dirt surface. I'm just curious. I guess you're going through TRC, so they'll get you on that, right?
Yeah, we're planning all gravel for the driving surfaces. I think it's back several more, the site plan. It's all landscaping or, all right, so there's a little brick at the front. One more back, I think. There we go. All right, at the bottom there, we're calling out gravel in the driving area, and then at the front, a new brick apron, and everything else is landscaping. I wonder if the dirt was, I think that was on the existing plan. Maybe that you saw that.
Maybe. Okay. Could be. And then on the wall section for Hardy, I didn't see any detail regarding the, I guess, horizontal joints that you'll have to deal with there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't have a particular thing called out on that. I was looking at some different ways people handle that, but we need to take a look at how we'll do that.
And my last question is that, so previously you just sort of like misinterpreted the new flood maps and missed that foot differential.
We have a flood elevation certificate, but it was done with the NVGD 29 datum. So that's what we were using until we realized that really we need to be updating these to the NAVD 88 datum.
But you were using the new base flood.
Yeah.
Just at the wrong level. Okay.
Yeah, it was just the grade, the spot
Mm-hmm.
elevations. We had to subtract from those. We were using the correct flood elevation and design flood elevation. The ground dropped on us.
Any other board questions? All right, Kim, we'll move into public comment.
Thank you. We have April Wood. April, you have the floor. I think.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has met with the applicant and has reviewed the request for conceptual approval for the construction of a new 2.5-story house at the rear of 157 Wentworth Street. We believe that the design of this building should be simplified by removing the angled columns and installing a consistent siding material of either 100% board and batten or 100% horizontal siding. On the south elevation, we recommend resizing the small second floor porch window so it is consistent with the other windows on this elevation. We recommend deferral so these changes can be made. Thank you.
And we also have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We would like to thank the applicant for reaching out to us on this project and appreciate responsiveness to several of our previous comments. However, we continue to feel the architectural direction of the building takes on a fairly suburban character and should be restudied to better relate to the historic context. We agreed with previous staff comments that a traditional design direction would be most appropriate and feel modifications to the design, including the outward projecting columns and cable railings, are a step in the wrong direction. We continue to feel this building should be traditionally detailed and would encourage the applicant to continue to refine the materials, proportions, and detailing of the building, including the roofing, dormers, eaves, window and door openings, and porch elements to better relate to the context. Thank you.
All right, Kim, and do we have anyone else speaking from the public?
Nope, that's all we have.
All right, well, then I'll turn it over to you for city staff comments and recommendations.
Do this all again. Bear with me a minute. Okay. We continue to urge the applicant to lean toward a more traditional design as noted in the last presentation. Elements such as the slanted columns should be eliminated. Other items that appear to give the design a suburban feel are the bulky trim, heavy columns, and extraneous trim on the dormers. Refine these elements by reducing or eliminating. Board and batten siding is out of character with the proportions of the house and the character of the street. Eliminate in favor of the previous siding and specify product source for fiber cement board. The building was already pushing the envelope in terms of height and subordination, especially to the carriage house, but this extra foot is concerning and should be reduced by floor-to-floor height adjustments. Staff continue concern about rear porch proportions, French doors, windows, and add to the cabled railings. We feel this entire south elevation warrants restudy. So the staff's recommending deferral with staff comments noted.
Thank you, Kim. Ms. Romano, did you want to respond to any of the public comment or staff comments?
Hey, this is Neil. I'll be addressing the comments if that's okay. So we actually we were responding with this application to what the board had mentioned. We're kind of stuck in a tough situation with the 2.5 stories. We would love to do this, do a completely contemporary building back there. It's so far back from the street, and I think it would probably help architecturally if we could do something more contemporary. We were trying to respond to the direction that we got from the board by making it more contemporary. So we're getting a little bit of a mixed message here from Historic Charleston Foundation and the staff. Understand your comments. I personally think it should go more contemporary and be more separate from the front house, especially because it's so far back from the street. I think dropping the ceiling height to make the building shorter, I don't think it would really make a big difference as far as the way it looks. Again, it's just from being so far back, but I think it would make a big difference in the livability of the house. So if we could just get some good direction, and again, I think we were responding to what the board was telling us. So I hope that you agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. All right, let's move into board discussion and a vote.
Okay, this is Bill. I'll go ahead. I believe several of the comments that we made at the last review, I think I did make a lot of those. One of those being the sort of clean lined effect that I believe we were looking for from the first. I believe the comments I made at that time was that the house sort of did appear in limbo. It was in between sort of a traditional interpretation and obviously more of a modern structure with modern materials. And to that effect, that was the context that generated that kind of suburban feel to it. And I was trying to basically say to advocate that the form was close. I believe that the detailing really needed to be more clean line. And I think the applicants made strides towards that. The material palette proposed here is obviously more contemporary. Cleaning up some of the elements has been done and accomplished. I think there's a little bit more, maybe further, that can be done with that. I'd say a couple of points that are just a little bit of notice to me were for example, the shed dormer that is seen sort of, well, more or less facing the street direction, we'll call it that. The width of that dormer, I would like to have seen that potentially reduced to where it was maybe just a slightly more than trim width away from the sides of the window. It's a little bit large right now in width. And I appreciate the efforts with the slanted columns. I think really more what I was sort of looking for in my comments were maybe more of a reduction of some of the capital and base details of the columns, maybe make them more, clean line, just square, straight columns. I think the slanting is kind of it's an effort to contemporize it, but it's a little distracting in that it still has to some degree of base and capital detail. So it kind of reads more like a porch is kind of leaning a little bit on both sides. So I would think that in my view, I was kind of hoping to see more of just sort of a straightforward interpretation of the columns, without more of the ornamentation being that capital and base details. So, I think it has made positive strides in the direction, at least that for the comments I was making. I do think there are probably still a couple more refinements, and I believe the comments that I made were in deference to the direction that staff has suggested previously, going toward more of a traditional design. We were kind of at that point before where we could go either way. But I believe the point I was trying to make at that time was I thought a more clean line solution would not detract from the historic material and historic structures that are on the site. It would read as obviously a building constructed of this vintage right here, but in sympathetic massing to some of the surrounding neighborhood context. So I think it's come a long way. I do think there's still some refinements on the table for that. I would say that maybe, especially with like the slanted columns, it might have gone a little too far from what I was trying to suggest. But I do think that there are many other elements that are headed in the right direction. So, thank you.
All right, I'll kind of weigh in a little bit. Kim, could you just go to the site section just so I can stare at that while I'm talking? So many pages.
Where is it?
Yeah, keep going back past the renderings.
Back. Why you guys should be controlling your own.
One more, one more. Oh, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
Zoom in, Julia.
yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I really didn't weigh in last time, and I recognize that they have, you know, conceptual approval of what was submitted before, but I'm just going to vocalize that the structure just feels really foreign to me, and it's wedged in there so close to the carriage house. I feel like that's what zoning variances are made for. So if you could push it 10 feet away from the historic house and have fenestration on that north elevation, it would just be a really different situation. You know, and it's true that there are other large dependencies close by, but those are kind of responding to their own immediate context, their front houses and their properties. And again, I realize that the board granted conceptual approval, so there you go. But I'm real concerned about that extra foot of height. It just intensifies it even more. And like has been said already, some of the details that just don't seem to speak to the existing context, in my estimation. Planted columns. That's all I've got.
It's Glenn. I'm going to keep my comments very brief because I believe this came, the conceptual review of this came to the board in the one meeting that I've missed in the past year. So I apologize for that. But to me, the height, you know, I understand a foot is a foot, but I think we are pretty steady with our directive with regard to keeping height minimum, and I think that's bothering me a bit. And I'm really going to defer to my fellow board members on the styling and the direction it's taken because of the fact that I was not present for the last review. Thank you.
Fillmore here. I was not at the initial preview as well, so I will reserve comments and let my fellow board members deal with that. Thank you.
I guess real quick, I'm sort of trying to zoom in here and look at these floor to floor heights or ceiling heights. So I guess what I'm interpreting is that we have a, whoops, well, no, okay, here we go. Here we go, 10-foot floor to floor and then 9.6 floor to floor. So it looks like, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of a 9-foot ceiling and maybe a 8.5-foot ceiling or something like that. I would think potentially there would be a way to pull out maybe a foot, you know, in that, or maybe take a look at some of the structural depths and just see if it's possible to get that foot back. I think, Julia, to your point, yeah, a foot taller is a visible difference. So it's a very good point. And I didn't know if anybody on the board had any further comments. Staff's recommended deferral, but it's for a couple of comments that I guess are to some degree, we're in deference to those comments, or at least the previous review was in deference to some of those being a more clean lined solution. And I believe the applicant has furthered that. So But there are the other items that appear, the bulky trim, heavy columns, and then the siding material being out of character with the street. Mentioning the previous siding probably being better or potentially a more viable solution in staff's notes here. And then, of course, the height mentioned that we just talked about. And then the rear porch, which I guess we haven't really talked a lot about, but French doors, windows, and cable railings, which I believe staff's mentioning warranted restudy. So I guess if I was trying to get working towards a motion here, it would be more, I would say that it may be a deferral here, especially because of the height issue. But I believe maybe to give, at least in my mind, again, I'm only speaking for myself as a board member, to give the applicant a little more input. I would say probably that I'm encouraged by the cleaner line direction that they're headed. In my mind, I think that staff's comments, number 2, and I guess I was going to poll the board about staff's comment number 3 is the materiality. I guess we can talk about that maybe a little further. And then definitely staff's comment number 4 and staff's comment number 5 are applicable. So I guess I would ask, does anybody want to weigh in or further discuss at least their reaction regarding staff's comment number 3?
Can we go back to the siding, Kim? I guess I've got it on my other screen.
Lighting or siding?
Siding.
Siding. There you go.
What is it?
Good one. I'm going to zoom in.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we do see a fair bit of, and actually, okay, I wanted to make sure this is truly a board and batten. It's kind of rendering more like maybe a vertical grooved siding, but is it indeed a board and batten siding or a reverse board and batten? I'm trying to understand.
It's supposed to be board and batten.
It's a board and batten. Okay, thank you. So I didn't know what you guys thought about that. We have seen it before on new construction, and I don't know if you guys had an opinion on that.
Bill, it's Glenn. I don't know. I know I said I was going to kind of keep quiet on the design because I wasn't there for the conceptual, but I think that detailing is probably pushing the envelope a little.
To the point, maybe Glenn, you're saying you're more in agreement with staff's comments, maybe more of a siding solution. I could even see maybe something like this potentially working because the applicant had mentioned hardy material, and then we discussed some alternate thicker material. I could see potentially a solution like maybe up here in the upper part using the thinner hardy and then maybe a fatter hardy below or something like that. I mean, it's just to try to see if there's a way to give a subtle, differentiation.
Yeah, I think the property is worthy of better quality materials than what we're being truthfully. I regret that I wasn't there for the conceptual review, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, Glenn, you're right. That was one of the comments I believe that was made before by the board was the materiality and making sure that it was, of good quality materials, if I recall that correctly.
I don't think this is there. I think it should be deferred.
And I guess, could I ask if other board members, regarding staff's comment number 1, do other board members have a different opinion than, say, I do regarding that? Do you feel that a more traditional direction is applicable? I mean, we did review this and approve it last time with the comments that it be a more clean line solution, and I would still stand by that, but is that a sticking point for anybody? I guess I'm asking.
A clean line, I think, is appropriate, and I think you probably intended something a little different from how they interpreted it. And I almost think that going back to the previous, it looks cleaner to me, you know. So subtract the column capitals and days, like you said, and just kind of clean that up a little. I think that would be, I could almost go into a contemporary direction without making really bold attempts to be contemporary.
That is kind of what I was thinking, Julie. You're right on. Again, I think they've made strides towards it. It's just maybe slightly off the mark. Some of it might have gone a little too far, and so I guess we are talking about deferral here. I don't want to get the applicant in a spin cycle here, but I was just trying to see if we could give a little more of a directive of what we would be looking for in that. And I think, Julia, that's a very good point. It's kind of like what we had before, but clean line means just take maybe clean up some of the detailing and like the columns and some other items like that. And I think the foot, again, is kind of pulling me off a little bit as well. So that would probably be the trigger for the deferral that I would think would be that 1 foot.
And I think all staff comments are good myself.
Do you think the comment 1 though, which is go back to a more traditional, which, well, when I hear that, I'm thinking, yeah,
right, back to column capitals.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe all comments except 1.
Sure.
Okay. And I hope the applicants kind of heard at least. I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on kind of my comments, because I believe I was the one in the previous meeting that made the comments about the clean line effect. So that's really kind of what my intent of those comments were. So the 1 foot is problematic. So I would say then I will go ahead and make a motion, if that's okay, for deferral with staff comments 2, 3, 4, and 5 noted. And yeah, I think that's it.
So would you maybe just articulate I'm pretty sure it's our custom, if not an official policy, that vinyl windows are not really okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was going to ask that. Thank you, Julia. I was going to ask, and I hate to get specific with manufacturers, but I was going to try to ask. That's not an all vinyl window; it's a vinyl clad window. So I'm assuming. May I make the stretch of assuming that might be an Anderson product? May I ask the applicant, I guess?
I cannot recall offhand which manufacturers are making the high quality vinyl clad windows, but our understanding was that the nicer vinyl clads were being used or accepted for newer buildings, but we would definitely find the better quality ones, not the bad ones.
Right. I guess then I would say, just if it's possible, maybe come up with a manufacturer and maybe submit that and inspect next time, and just be wary of the word vinyl, because Julia, that's a very good point. We're definitely, as a board, and I know as a board and staff policy, vinyl is not a good word to hear. So I guess we'd want clarification on that selection.
Bill, is your motion for a deferral with staff comments 2 through 5 and a board comment, submit the proposed windows.
Specifications for proposed windows, yes.
Bill, oh, I'm sorry.
Go.
No,
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'll ask my question after you. I'm sorry.
Well, we got a motion floating, so if you have some, I'd love
I was
to.
going to ask you a question to clarify the motion. And you excluded comment 1. Does that mean that the cable rails and the sloped columns are acceptable?
No, I believe staff's comments addressed that back in. I know number 5 addresses the cable railing, and I thought there was, maybe I'm wrong in this, sloped columns.
And you're right about the cable rail.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe that comments just clarify all materials, like siding. We had questions about railing. We had just further clarify all materials.
Clarify all materials. And are you guys in agreement that maybe the slope columns have gone just a little too far, and really the intent of the clean line was really just to maybe take the columns in the original submittal and just get rid of some of the detailing on those, be the capitals and bases and all that, just really clean those up. But I guess that's what I was thinking, just to let the applicant know whether or not this slope column direction is something viable.
So Bill, are you, what is your motion with regard to the sloped?
Well, it didn't include any verbiage about the slope column, so that's why I was trying to poll everybody. And to me, I think the slope columns are going a little bit too far, but again, this is just my comment. And I was trying to, this deliberation, I hope is helpful for the applicant as well to hear this. So that's why I was sort of proposing the question for everybody. And so my own view would be, and the cleaner line solution was really just sort of as previously proposed, but to get rid of the, detailing of the columns, just to clean those up. And because I did mention staff's comment number 5 regarding the cable railing, I think we probably would be interested in my mind, going back to just a really streamline. It could even be a wood picket, or maybe just a finer detailed. And I don't mean, that's up for interpretation, I guess. It's really just a question, and in staff's comment, and where I added staff's comment number 5, that's basically in my mind saying, okay, we think the cable railing maybe is not really warranted here. And I would go so far as to add that as a board comment, if you guys are okay, that also that about the slope columns as well, just to go back to the standard vertical columns, but remove all the detailing, capitals, base details on those, just to make them clean. And I'll add that into that motion if that's okay.
Okay, so Bill, your motion is deferral with staff comments 2 through 5, board comment to submit the specifications for all proposed materials, and a second board comment to replace the slope columns. Go back to the original design on the columns.
Just verticality, I would say, Lindsay. Yeah, but still, right, but still cleaning up the detailing on the columns, but the verticality of the columns, yes.
Okay. All right, do I have a second for Bill's motion?
Sure, I'll second that.
Put to a vote. Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
And the chair votes with the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson and Mr. Romano.
Thank you for your input, everyone.
Moving on to agenda item number 6, 40 Savage Street.
Kim?
Come on, mute.
Okay, I'm ready. Sorry. 40 Savage Street is requesting conceptual approval for the renovation, including a rear addition. The building is not rated. It's in the Charlestown neighborhood and was constructed in 1838 and in the old and historic district. Here's an aerial for just a little context between Broad and Trad on the east side. Here's the house as it sits back on the property and looking south on Savage and looking north. And some Sanborn maps from 1902 and 1944. And if Mr. Fava wants to take it from here.
Thank you, Kim.
Floor.
Good evening. Eddie Fava with Eddie Fava Architects, representing our client Chris Allen, who has purchased 40 Savage, and it's a super sweet little house. His thought was to, kind of just proceed modestly with it. I can skip to the next page, Kim. As you can tell, which is evident from the photo in the bottom right of this page, it's set extremely far back from the street. And that's actually a factor or a result of the fact that where that little indentation is about midway down on the 42 Savage 40 property lot line, that says, yeah, just right up there. The property used to take a hard left there to the driveway. And this house sat behind it. And that was up until the 50s, exactly, per the Sanborn maps. And this 50 and the 55 Sanborn map, it still has those external structures. So all of the modifications that were made to the rear are not original or historic. So, and in poor shape and poorly built. So that's the area where this work would be proposed. It did go to zoning just by virtue of the fact of everything that was there was kind of sitting over setbacks, but it was regranted with our proposal. So it was vetted by the board and neighbors at that time. Next page. This is the house proper, and again, up along the front, you can the top level of photos, you can see the character of the home, which is very much would be maintained exactly like it is. The top two photos right are at the rear, which is a series of the additions, a kind of a large overgrown tree that straddles the property line, and a shed. Bottom left, again, a series of additions that were made to the property from 50s through the early 70s on it. And the idea was that the addition replaces those. And in the bottom right photo, you can see it would be sitting back essentially more than 70 feet from the property line once it's built. Next page, please. So on the right side, our existing site plan illustrating the current rear and shed and whatnot, and then the left side, the proposed site plan, which accommodates the setbacks and was reapproved by zoning to that means. And the portion that is visible then from the street is essentially a 9-foot section to the left of that existing little powder room that just stays within the side yard setbacks. And again, 75, well, a little over 70 feet from the street. Next page. So again, existing site, existing first floor plan on the right, proposed where the shed's removed, and the new structure has the addition reworked at the back, with a porch element that faces the street and mitigates the addition, and just the 9 foot of it that's kind of visible. Next page. Second level allows for a master bedroom and another bedroom upstairs, where again, a lot more functional than what's there presently, but again, with the premise, hopefully that it's to the rear of the structure, and clearly the main structure takes prominence. Next page, please. That's a roof plan illustrating current and proposed off the back. Next, please. And proposed elevations the proposed Savage Street elevation, bottom right, where the front and main house is essentially restored as is. The addition's off to the right. The rear, which is minimally, if at all, visible from the street beyond, the backyard, showing both existing, proposed, existing above, proposed below. Next, please. And again, east elevation towards the neighbor side. Next, please. And the west elevation, the other side. I think that's all I've got. Kim, I might go back to the front elevation and mention too that we've had the opportunity with my owner specifically wanted to meet and talk to neighbors and did so and had a list of that submitted with zoning and I think with this application too, but hasn't heard any objections on any front. We did have the opportunity to speak and thank Preservation Society, Anna Catherine and April Wood at Historic Charleston Foundation. And both of them had similar comments and we would take note of those and happy to work with them if that's a concern of the board. One was the roof line of the addition. They had suggested that it be, to the height of what's there presently or slightly lower. The only reason we had maintained it a little bit higher is just from the side elevations, it appeared to look very squat when we did that. And now, be it that's not something that's visible to the general public, it was to the neighbors. So we just thought it looked a little better, but happily can mitigate that and lower it. I do think that as Mr. Excuse me, as somebody had said prior, and I can't remember who, I apologize, but the elevation may appear a lot more dramatic in a two-dimensional form when you look at from the street perspective and where you are. I don't think it's dramatic at all. The other comment was in reference to the windows, which we had elected to use some larger windows with the idea that there's glass in the front and the back there. And that again, just really trying to differentiate the addition from anything else. And it was more of a anonymous or transparent. The railing and porch, we feel like mitigates it. Again, it's 75 feet or 70 feet back from the street. That thought that it was a nicer solution than having solid material or any confusion about the fact that it was part of the original structure. So appreciate your time and welcome any comments or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fava.
Thank you.
Do you have any board questions at this time?
Just real quick, Kim, can you go to the east elevation? Great. Okay. Thank you. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Eddie, I've got a quick one on the street side. So when we're seeing like the large roof fenestration at the addition, it's all trim around it, like no siding on that side. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Correct. And if we could flip to that briefly, Kim, the front elevation. Yes, exactly. So anything to the right of the original piazza of the original home would, yes, be trim detailed and that thing. So that, again, not only does the projection itself kind of set off the original historic structure, but hopefully the way that is detailed and trimmed out does as well.
Thank you.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, Kim, do we have any public comment?
We do. We have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Thank you, Kim. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We really appreciate the applicant reaching out to us on this request. While we are generally comfortable with the configuration of the proposed addition, given the site constraints, we ask that the roof line and eave be lowered to be properly subordinate to the main house. Further, we feel the scale of the front-facing casement windows on the new addition should be restudied to draw less attention to themselves on such a visible facade. Thank you.
And that's all.
All right. Kim, I'll turn it to you for city staff comments and recommendations.
Couple comments. The height of the roof ridge should be lowered to be more subordinate to the primary building with perhaps a flat roof. While we appreciate the differentiation, the fenestration scale on the front of the house should be reduced to be more compatible with the primary building. The door and window on the south elevation of the addition do not seem entirely compatible and warrant restudy. Please detail the material of the street facing south elevation at the addition. But that was clarified, so disregard comment 3. Our staff recommendation is conceptual approval with staff comments noted and final review by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Fava, did you want to respond to any of the public or staff comments?
Very briefly, if I may, Kim, just to maybe the page of photographs, one quick response and then just let y'all take it. Yeah, perfect. So again, it doesn't encompass it as much, but I would say that bottom right one is what we'd allude to, and that's even standing in the yard. That the where you can see the current window unit sticking out, that's forward of the little powder room there. So the addition is beyond that. So on our bottom right photo, if you imagine the addition off to the side, it's 9 feet to the right and 5 feet further back. And with the porch mitigation, again, we're happy to work with staff on that and appreciate that recommendation. If that's the way the board feels, could certainly work with the roof line, but would like to try to keep the windows. We just think it's a nice solution rather than something that conflicts a little bit, I feel, with trying to put back siding or something that would be of that color. And I feel like it makes it feel more like part of what was an original structure than what we had proposed. But again, appreciate the recommendation and happy to work with staff moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Fava.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Lindsay, I missed April Wood. We had April Wood signed up to speak.
Hey, sorry about that. I had very similar comments and wanted to thank Mr. Fava for reaching out. This is April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation. This property has long needed attention, and we are pleased to see the investment in this property. Given the size of the house and the placement of the house on the lot, we have no objections to the location and massing of the proposed addition. We do, however, have concerns about the roof. The proposed roof of the rear addition is 1 foot 9 inches taller than the roof of the historic structure, and therefore is not subordinate. We would like to see this reduced in height. Additionally, we believe that the end of the roof of the historic structure should be clearly defined and suggest that the roof height, that a roof hyphen be added to connect the historic roof to the roof of the addition. With these changes, we recommend approval of this application. Thanks for letting me speak after Eddie.
No worries.
And Mr. Fava, I will give you a minute if you had any additional response to the comments of April.
Nope, I'm all good. Thank you, April.
All right, we are now in board discussion.
This is Bill. I'll go ahead and jump in. I agree with staff's comments and recommendation. I do think lowering the ridge height down, kind of similar vein to your earlier comment, Eddie, the 2D effect. I think this is probably the same thing in reverse. So I think lowering it down probably would be warranted. And I think the other comments are good and valid. I think the only other thing potentially was if indeed the south facing windows are proposed to be reduced. And you had mentioned potentially a differentiation of siding and siding material in there. I can see that point, but I think you could work with staff on that because we would, in theory, by reducing the window sizes, see some of that siding. I don't know, maybe a shiplap or something might work. But anyway, I'm definitely in agreement, and I think it's a great application and design. I do agree with staff's comments to that effect and would support their recommendation as well.
Thank you.
I don't know that I have anything meaningful to add to that. No. My only reservation when I looked at it was seeing the replicated porch railings juxtaposed against the modern fenestration. So maybe staff's suggestion is a good one there. But of course, I understand why you want to add to the side. It makes all kinds of sense. I'm not worried about the eave being differentiated. I'm also not that worried about a roof hyphen. I don't know. Yeah, but maybe just look at lowering that ridge, even though I understand why you do.
Thank you.
I don't have anything to add. I am in, I think in agreement with staff.
Glenn, I am in the same boat with Fillmore, and I'm happy to see this little house hopefully getting some love. And I do the only comment I have is simply with regard to the fact that the distance of the house off the street, it's a bit unique for the neighborhood. That definitely makes me a lot more comfortable with the proposed addition and the roof than I think I would be a lot of times. So I don't have anything beyond the comments that have already been made.
I'm just going to make a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments 1 and 2 and final review by staff.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff comments 1 and 2 and final review by staff. Do I have a second?
Bill, I'll
Glenn,
second. Oops, sorry, Glenn.
No, you can have credit. Don't care.
Beat you to it. Beat you to it.
Bill was first.
Yeah,
So
beat you to it.
Bill was first to second.
Sorry. First with the second, yeah.
Well, Glenn, I'll let you vote first.
Thank you. I vote in favor of the motion.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
And the chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Fava.
Thank you all. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, board. Good night.
Bye.
All right, agenda item number 7 has been withdrawn for staff review, and we are on the last agenda item, number 8, because 9 has also been withdrawn. Agenda item 8 is 75 South Battery. Kim, will you give us?
Thank you, Lindsay. 75 South Battery is requesting preliminary approval for new construction of a second-story addition over an existing one-story rear addition. The building's not rated in the Charlestown neighborhood and was built in 1953 in the old and historic district. Just an aerial for context here, right at the corner, one off the corner of Lenwood and South Battery. Here's the existing house. And looking east on South Battery and west. Sanborn map from 1944 showing a vacant parcel, and by 1955, current dwelling had been constructed. And we have Miss Kate Campbell presenting. Ms. Campbell, you have the floor. I'm going to take it from here.
Ms. Campbell, you're on mute.
Hi.
Oh.
Okay. I've got Victoria here with me too. Hey, how's everybody?
Good.
Good. Thanks, Kim. This is 75 South Battery. Our clients we've had a few staff approvals prior to being before you all tonight. Mainly to some revising the front door and some maintenance, and also a rear addition, mudroom addition on the western interior corner. And the clients are now interested in adding a master bedroom on top of an existing non-historic building that was added to the property probably in the 80s. This actually Margaret Smith's old house on South Battery, for those of you who know where she used to live. Kim, if you can go to the site plan or site survey, site plan. So The hatched area there that you see is the mudroom addition that was previously approved at staff. And to the right of that, where the fireplace, that room, library, is the one-story portion that we're proposing to add to the top of the existing. Yeah. We did receive BZA approval on Tuesday night for the special exception to extend vertically along the eastern property line because it is a non-conforming side setback, and we received unanimous approval on that. If you want to go to the floor plans, that's the area of the proposed addition. Sanborn's, that's the existing plan, a little larger. Second floor plan shows the proposed addition. We've got a couple different constraints. Kim, we did go back and look at the photographs, and on the eastern rear corner of the existing house, there are existing coins, and there's about a 4-inch difference between the corner of the original 4-square house and the addition that was done on the first floor. So we would retain that going on up. So the plan is actually a little inaccurate there. There is a corner that's expressed there on the eastern side. You can kind of see it better right there. Yeah. And it's a little bit bigger than that in actuality. So, the other constraint that we have to deal with, if you go to the back elevation, is we have 3 existing dormers on the roof that we are going to be tucking the new addition roof underneath so that we don't get into the sill of that existing dormer. Sorry, 2 existing dormers. Yeah, so that really drove the slope, and the detailing of the second floor is an extension of the existing stucco. We're proposing to kind of keep that detail at the mid-level, reminiscent of what was there, but then just extend its CMU block with wood furring on the interior, and then replicate the similar detailing on the eaves, and tie into the existing drainage that's happening at the rear with the gutters and downspouts. All of the gutters are being replaced currently on the main house with copper, and so we would continue that with the replacement of the gutters on the rear. And you can see there the mudroom addition as well that was already previously approved. But happy to answer any questions. We do have full support of all the neighbors through the BZA process, and they've seen the design, and everybody is in favor of it, and have reached out to both April and Anna Catherine, and they are also in support of the application. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. My fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
This is Bill. I have one question. Kate, the chimney, it's shown on the roof plan. At the addition, there's a fireplace that looked like on the ground floor, but then on the second floor plan, there's no indication. Is there, am I missing something?
We're proposing to take it out. Yeah.
Okay, so
there, yeah.
Okay, so the chimney's out altogether.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thanks. That's my question.
Any other board questions?
Kate, I think you said that the front door change was already approved by staff, but could you just articulate what that was? Just
There's
curious.
an existing door that has, it's actually not original. It has very thick mullions. You can look at the photograph of the front.
On the transom or the?
It has a transom, yeah. So we were proposing to replace it with that. I mean, and that's already been approved. It's been ordered. So yeah, the door, it's hard to say, but the main door actually has very thick mullions and a very thick style. So we're doing a more delicate door.
Okay, thanks.
Delicate mullion pattern, yep. And then another part of that application was removing that side stair stoop, which wasn't original, but that's already been approved and done, so.
Yes, I'm sorry, Kate, one more question. I'm back on that fireplace. So the existing firebox and everything, is that coming out, or are you just gonna leave that? It's just gonna be a dummy fireplace? Is that what we're saying? It's not gonna go direct vent or something, right?
Correct. No, they're not. They have explored maybe putting in like a B vent or something in there, but it's all inboard right now. And so they wanted the space in the master to utilize. But yeah, it's going to basically be a dummy fireplace at this point, unless we figure something else out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions? All right, Kim, do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Okay, and I was looking at the application, but it looks like those letters were to the Board of Zoning Appeals, so I'm not going to read any of those.
Yeah.
The record. Okay. All right, Kim, if you'll give city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Thank you. Staff have only one objection, which is likely difficult to address with current addition in place, which would be to disengage the addition from the roof line of the historic building. Similarly, it would be nice if the addition was not coplanar to the existing building to clearly delineate the addition from the primary building. Staff's recommending conceptual approval with the possibility of this staff comment and final review by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Ms. Campbell, did you want to respond to the staff comment?
Yeah, I think on the eastern side, I think that was one of the comments, being coplanar with the building. And Kim, I can send you some photographs of what that is, but the coins are definitely visible and there is a corner there. So we would just, at the existing one-story addition, so we would just be, you'd still see the corner of the house on that side. I think the comment about the disengaging of the roof line, we can explore lowering that eave a little bit so that we're coming in subordinate to the eave of the existing house, a little bit more than we are, you know, and I think that might help to just disengage from that eave condition. So it's shown there in section, but I think the elevation is a little bit misleading where it looks like it's almost lined up with it. So
the dormer,
the eave line.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if we can get that to come in underneath the eave of the main house, I think that's probably what I would suggest. It would be difficult to put any sort of like hyphen on this building because it really is an extension. It's a two-story extension on top of what was already not having of a hyphen. And so I think simplicity probably wins in this one and just extending it up, but having the eave subordinate to the main house more than what we have.
But just to clarify my position on that, if it's going to go above the roof line, I'm indifferent if it sits here or if it sits lower. I think it'll probably be cleaner if it aligns.
Okay.
So if you're not going to completely disengage the roof, I would say that's fine with the staff anyway.
Yeah. Incorporating any sort of hyphen like we did on that other project you were referencing, we'd have to then have another secondary roof of some sort in between the double hung window and the mudroom, which I think might muddy the water a little bit. So unless it was happening on the first floor, you know, like if there was a hyphen on the first floor, but there's really not.
Understood. Thank you, Kate.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. We are now in board discussion.
Just real quick. So Kim, that discussion you just had, so I want to make sure if you were to adjust your comment, how would that be worded now, given what you just discussed?
I would just eliminate the comment.
Eliminate
completely.
it. Okay.
Yeah, because she can't make that happen.
Okay, great. Thanks. I guess I'll just continue on then. I think it looks fine, and I'm in support of staff's recommendation now without a comment.
Thank you.
Fillmore here. I agree with Bill.
Glenn, I agree as well. And if Julia, do you have any big feedback?
No. Nor small.
Thank you.
I would make a motion in support of staff's recommendation as worded.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval and final review by staff, but with staff comments noted.
Well,
There's no
I guess
comment.
technically there is none.
That's what
Yeah.
Conceptual
Sorry.
approval and final review by staff.
Yes, correct.
Got it.
I'll second that.
All right, and I'll put it to a vote. Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor.
Julia.
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Madam Chairman.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Kim,
opposed?
did you want us to stay?
Yeah,
Yes,
there was
please.
an email about staying for a couple of minutes.
Neil's
Or-
still here for some reason. Neil.
He's